Hello. So I'll be presenting on the case study of the San Pedro Town Council. And the first question is determine if the San Pedro Town Council is required to submit a budget in accordance with IPSAS and explain the reasoning for your answer. So for this, after analyzing the financial statements, I realized that the San Pedro Town Council is indeed utilizing an accrual basis um, of IPSAS to present their financial statements, and therefore they're not required to submit a budget. However, if the town council had an approved budget that was publicly available, then they would be required to submit their budget along with a comparison of the actual and final budget, similar to how it's done in the cash basis IPSAS, to show the differences between the two, if there are variances, negative or positive, and to do a reconciliation of their actual amounts with their financial statements. So ultimately, my answer is no, but in the instance that they would have a publicly available budget, then my answer would be yes. Now, question 2 says to provide a list of components of the statement of position that were presented by the town council. So, going over their financial statements and their statement of position, they did list their assets and broke it down in current and non-current. They had their liabilities also broken down in current and non-current. They had their total net assets, and they all were very detailed in their breakdown. And they had notes, note numbers for the notes in the financial statements. Then question 3, provide a list of components of the statement of performance that the San Pedro Town Council should present under IPSAS. So going over their statement of performance, which would be like their revenue, expenses, would be like an income statement. They didn't have a net surplus or deficit for the period of associates and joint ventures accounted for using the equity method. They didn't have pre-tax gains or loss recognized on the disposal of assets or the settlement of liabilities, and then they didn't have a total surplus or deficit for the period. So those would be things that they would need to include to improve their financial statement. Then question number 4, provide a list of required disclosure notes that the San Pedro Town Council did present correctly on. So they did correctly disclose their basis of preparation and their accounting policies. So they stated that they were presenting their statements in accordance with IFRS for SMEs. So they didn't directly state IPSAS, but IPSAS does fall under the IFRS. Then they provided their entity information. So they gave like a brief background of the town council, when it was founded, would be like the domicile and legal forms of the town council. They said the legislation by which it operates, the law that it operated under, and they stated the nature of their nature of their operations in their brief description of themselves. They also included judgments in their notes, which is a requirement. They had estimation uncertainty, the key sources of those are explained and detailed in their notes. And they also had other supporting information for all items in their financial statements. So those 5 things were what they presented on correctly. Now the fifth question is, were there any deficiencies in the application of accrual basis accounting and IPSAS 1 presentation of financial statements noted in the financial statements of the San Pedro Town Council? If yes, please provide details of conclusion. So for the most part, I didn't find any deficiency in their statements. It was pretty well done, well reported. Everything was relevant, transparent. They were useful. They had their statement of financial position, statement of financial performance, statement of change in assets and equity, and they had all their notes in the financial statements to back up their whatever they had to state and declare in the beginning. I noted that they also had comparisons from 2022, 2023, which was the current year that they were presenting on. They had their assessments, judgments, estimations. They stated their accounting policy, basis of preparation. Everything was well done. The only area of deficiency I would say is linked to question number 3, where they did not have any surplus or deficit in their statements, and that would be the only area. It was one small area to fix and that they didn't have, and that would basically be it. So that constitutes my analysis of the San Pedro Town Council's financial statements for 2023.